It's Hunting Swan here, and today I wanted to do a tutorial for Bogus Journey, and it's going to be a character tutorial on Aris. So I'm just gonna try and help you get the best out of Aris. Um, it's quite funny because Aris does quite a lot of character tutorials himself, so for him to have someone do a character tutorial on him, yeah, that's quite funny. But so let's take a look just quickly at Aris's drives,
Would you spoil it already?
which are kind of his classes, which change his stats and change which abilities he has access to. So his drives are Booster, Troll, and Sand King. And I did this little comparison for you guys so that you had access and information about how each of the drives progresses in terms of stats. So these stats are for level 99 in each of the drives. And the stats are max HP, max MP, attack, which determines how much damage your physical attacks will do. Defense reduces damage from physical attacks. MAT, magic attack, that is how strong your spells will be. MDF is magic defense, and that reduces damage from spells and magical attacks. Agility helps you to get more turns, and it boosts your evasion, and it might do some other stuff as well, but those are the main two things. And luck is for your critical attacks, and I think it also helps with evasion, and it helps with Aris's steal skills as well. So that's what the stats do, that's what they impact on in the game. So here's the information for you guys. I'm not gonna go like right deep into it and analyze it for hours and hours, but I think it's useful to know. Just how they develop each of the different drives. What you can take from it kind of immediately is the booster is pretty much middle of the road. It's kind of in the middle for stat wise. I think Troll and Sand King will generally have the superior stats, depending on, Sand King will have much better magic. Troll has much better attack than Booster. Booster doesn't really excel anywhere except for luck. It's got the highest luck, but so Booster, if you're going to take advantage of Booster, you really need to be buffing to get the most out of it. But you guys can look at this information and maybe take some stuff from it.
What's the matter, girl? Why are you pouting? What's the problem?
Okay, but now I want to go through all of Aris's skills in his various drives and kind of give them a grade to let you guys know just how useful they are, and which skills you should be focusing on. So for Booster, the first skill is Now and Zen. I gave Now and Zen an A because it's it only costs 20 TP, so it's quite cheap in terms of that, and it boosts both Rip and Aris's max HP and max MP for I think 10 turns, so that's quite a long time. So you don't have to refresh it like constantly. It stays active for quite a long time. But the most important thing about Now and Zen is that it gives you regenerative abilities. So it will regenerate your HP and your MP each turn. You'll get a small percentage of your HP and your MP back each turn. So that just really helps you to focus on attacking, because you're automatically healing each turn. So it's super useful, and I gave it an A. The next skill is Golden Oldies, which I gave a B. Golden Oldies is first of all, it's quite hard to say Golden Oldies, but Golden Oldies is it can vary in terms of usefulness. It really depends on the enemies that you're fighting as to how useful it is. I think bosses like Suki, who love to use a lot of status effects, it's really useful for those fights, because golden oldies, if Aris uses golden oldies, he will be protected from status elements for, I think, quite a long time. I think it's around 10 turns as well. So for those 10 turns, it will be pretty impossible to inflict Aris with any kind of negative status effect, you know, like blind or poison or slow. He'll be protected from all that BS. So, you know, if you know the game and if you know the boss fight with Suki, she uses a lot of those status effects, so it could be really useful for those kind of fights. But for other fights, it might not be that useful, so I gave it a B. Hype, I just had to give an S tier, because it's just too powerful. Hype lets Aris act multiple times per turn. So once his turn comes around, if he has the hype status, he will be able to act 3, maybe 4 times in a row. And what's really amazing about it is that it's not just attacking. He can do all sorts of things with his 4 turns. So he can use items and then attack. He can cast spells, cast buffs, and then attack, and then use an item. You know, so he can really do a lot with hype, and it's just too powerful. So it's definitely S tier. Does take quite a lot of TP, 35 TP, so you can't spam it, but it's really good. Okay, next skill is Nicotine High. I gave this a C because first of all, Nicotine High, it's quite unusual in terms of its cost. It doesn't cost TP and it doesn't cost MP. It costs HP. So it actually depletes your HP when you use it. So that in itself is kind of a negative, but it regains 50% of your MP, and it regains, I think, about 25% of your TP. So it's kind of a trade-off. You're sacrificing some HP for MP and TP. So it's really depending on if you're using a lot of spells or if you're using a lot of skills that require TP, then Nicotine High could possibly be useful. But it's quite situational, so I gave it a C. Okay, DDP Yoga. DDP Yoga is another really powerful skill. Gave it an A because DDP Yoga reduces the MP cost of skills and spells to 1/5 of their original cost. So it's not by 1/5, it's to 1/5. So say if a skill had if the skill originally cost 50 MP, if you use DDP Yoga, the cost will go down to 10 MP or whatever. So that's really useful for long, drawn-out boss fights where you're using a lot of skills and spells, and you really need them to be not as costly in terms of MP. So that's DDP Yoga, really useful. Okay, next skill is Floral Fallout. Floral Fallout is like kind of an ultimate attacking skill. The damage on it actually comes from your attack. So if Aris's attack is high, it will be more powerful, but it also takes its damage formula from Aris's luck. So if you have really high luck and really high attack, Floral Fallout will do even more damage. Okay, last skill is Gower's Requiem, and this is another S tier skill because Gower's Requiem protects the party against being knocked out. So what it does is if you're attacked and that attack would have KO'd you, then it will, if you have Gower's Requiem, it will instead leave you with 1 HP. So you won't be knocked out, you'll just have 1 HP. So that's really, really, really useful because it just helps you to just survive the attack and then heal up and hopefully wipe out the enemy next time. But it's very expensive in terms of TP, but it is very powerful.
You know the drill.
Okay, moving on. For Aris's troll skills, right. Let's try and burn through these quite quickly. Meat Spin is a B because it is, again, quite situational. It's the damage on Meat Spin scales off of your attack. So your attack has to be high for this to do a lot of damage, and it inflicts blind on the enemy. So if you really want to have the enemy be blinded, then that's what Meat Spin is great for. Belch, also a B, because Belch tries to inflict poison on your opponent. So if your opponent is immune to poison, it's not that useful, really. Big Dinner, another B. Big Dinner tries to instant kill the enemy, and it also drains HP from the enemy to Aris. So, you know, it's quite good, but the drawback about it is that it doesn't its damage formula is not very powerful, so it doesn't do a lot of damage. It's really only for the instant kill. If the enemy is weak to instant death, then it's quite useful. Okay, sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is a B. Sexual harassment is a debuff, and it seals the enemy's magic, and it debuffs them. It debuffs their stats. So some enemies are immune to it, but some aren't. So again, it's situational. Okay, Weed Killer. Weed Killer is an A because Weed Killer is a very powerful stat debuff. It will debuff all the enemies' stats. And the good thing about it is that unlike a lot of these other status effects, I think all enemies in the game there's no enemy in the game that is immune to the effects of Weed Killer. They will all have their stats reduced. So that's why it's an A. Okay, Smoilers. Smoilers is a S tier skill or a C tier skill, and that's just depending on which playthrough of the game it is. If it's your first playthrough, then Smoilers is an S tier skill because it gives you all the information about which element the enemy is weak to and which status effects you can inflict on the enemy. It's just really useful because if you don't have that information, you could be using spells that will heal the enemy, you could be trying to inflict poison on the enemy when it's immune to poison. So Smoilers just helps you to not waste your time, basically. But if it's your second playthrough and you know that information already, it's not that useful. Okay, Bracket Reset. Bracket Reset is definitely an A skill because Bracket Reset removes status enhancements from the enemy. So things like insect reflexes or buffs, any kind of buffs that the enemy does, Bracket Reset will remove them. So that can really, really be useful. And lastly, 3-color Gazelle Shit. 3-color Gazelle Shit is an A because it's very powerful. It hits 3 times. So for each of the turds, that's so funny because this is kind of like a serious tutorial, but talking about turds. So for each of the 3 turds does damage independently. So each of the 3 turds can actually critical hit, and in addition, each of the turds has a chance to inflict a status ailment on the enemy. So powerful, right? Okay.
No problem, I'm still good.
Sand King skills. Sand King, all of these abilities are based on Aris's magic stat. So he has to have high magic for these abilities to do a lot of damage. Bloom is A because Bloom is a healing spell, and it also removes poison and silence. So that's really really useful. Petal is also A because Petal is non-elemental. It's a non-elemental spell, and it can't be reflected, and it can't be evaded. So really quite useful in terms of that. Californian Chasm is B. Californian Chasm is a horizontal hitbox earth elemental spell, and it's just a B because if the enemy is immune to earth or absorbs earth, it can be quite it's useless. So that's why it's a B. And also it doesn't have the biggest hitbox in terms of skills. Okay, Okizeme Stomp. Okizeme Stomp I gave an A. Okizeme Stomp is also earth elemental spell, but it's got a much bigger hitbox. So that's why I gave it a higher rating than Californian Chasm. Cigarette Burn is your basic fire elemental spell, also a B. And Straight to Hell is your stronger fire elemental spell, so that's an A. Polar Bears. Polar Bears I gave an S because it's your only access to the ice element. It's your only spell that has the element of ice, so it can be kind of really useful if the enemy is weak against ice. And Monochrome Misery I gave a C to because the bad thing about Monochrome Misery is that it's a dark elemental spell, and there are hardly any enemies in the game that are weak to dark. Most of them actually resist it or absorb it, so that's why it's not super useful. Okay, moving on. Right, now I just want to quickly cover his chambers.
Don't ever try that.
Chambers are the term for your your subclass. So Aris's chambers are Begonia, Chasm, Pickpocket, and COPYCATFACE. Okay, Begonia. Begonia grants the use of Bloom, Petal, Flowers, Golden Oldies, Now and Zen, DDP Yoga, Floral Fallout, and Weed Killer. So kind of most of the buffing, or most of the buffs. That's what Begonia gives you access to. And Begonia boosts your magic attack by 1 and your max HP by a massive 38 each time you level up with this chamber equipped. That's important. You have to have the chamber equipped to get these stat bonuses, okay? So the thing about it is that max HP gain is really chunky. That's a really good max HP gain for leveling up. Okay, and Begonia works well with Troll and Sand King drives, just because it kind of duplicates a lot of booster skills. So if you had Booster as your drive and Begonia as your chamber, you would that doesn't make much sense because you would have duplicate skills. It's much better to use Begonia in conjunction with either Troll or Sand King. Okay, Chasm Chamber. Chasm grants the use of Californian Chasm, Okizeme Stomp,
Okizeme?
3-color Gazelle Shit, Monochrome Misery, Polar Bears, and Earth Wall. So Chasm gives you a lot of elemental spells, so that's quite useful. And when you level up with Chasm equipped, you will get a defense boost of 3 and a max MP boost of 4. So not a lot of a boost to your max MP, but the defense boost is really useful, and it's the only chamber that will boost your physical defense. So could be quite good. And Chasm works well with Troll and Booster drives. Similar to before, it wouldn't make much sense to equip Chasm with your Sand King drive because you'd just be getting duplicate skills. Okay, Pickpocket.
Give me your wallet and car keys, motherfucker.
Pickpocket is the first chamber that gives you unique skills. So Pickpocket gives you a whole bunch of stealing skills. Steal money, steal item, steal armor, steal weapon. Snatch, which lets you, it shows you all the items that the enemy has available to steal and lets you pick which one you want to steal. And Mug, which just has a physical attack attached to the Snatch skill. And Pickpocket boosts agility by 3 and luck by 2 on level up. So that's, those aren't really offensive stat boosts, so it's kind of tricky because you might want to have a different chamber equipped when you're leveling up for maybe more useful stat boosts. But it works well with all drives, and because it's unique, it's got unique abilities that you can't get anywhere else. Okay, Chainsmoker. Chainsmoker is a really important chamber that I wanted to cover because it takes a little bit of information to make it work for you. So let's just take a look. Chainsmoker grants the use of chain smoking, which is a unique ability to Chainsmoker. Nicotine high, cigarette burn, belch, and straight to hell. So a lot of fire elemental attacks. Chainsmoking is a fire elemental physical attack. So it's a physical attack that's imbued with the fire element. And when you level up with Chainsmoker, you get a boost to your magic attack and your attack. Okay, so it's a very offensive based chamber. So it will really boost your offense. Okay, but this is the key thing here with Chainsmoker, because chain smoking is similar to nicotine high. Both of these skills will they cost HP to use, so they deplete your HP each time you use them. But if you have the Chainsmoker chamber equipped, for every 1% of HP that Aris loses, his physical attack goes up by 2%. So what that means is the less HP that Aris has when he has the Chainsmoker chamber equipped, the lower his HP, the higher his physical attack will be. So that's why, because when you first look at Chainsmoker and you see, this attack is going to deplete my HP, it's going to reduce my HP each time I use it, you might kind of think, oh, pretty rubbish, it's pretty bad. This is not a good chamber. But it can be really, really powerful, because if you get really low on HP, your physical attack will be just doubled or maybe even more than that. So that can be seriously powerful. And you can also kind of manage, like, because chain smoking, I think it depletes your HP by 5% or around about that kind of amount. If you wanted to just have maybe a 50% boost to your attack, you could just use chain smoking until you got down to 50% of your max HP, and then you would have the desired boost to your physical attack. So you can kind of plan it in that way, but it's kind of a risky strategy to get really low on HP for that boost. Okay, and Chainsmoker works well with all drives. Yeah, it does. Okay, and so the final chamber that we can take a look at is COPYCATFACE.
Would you spoil it already?
COPYCATFACE grants the use of enemigo skills. And COPYCATFACE will boost your magic defense by 2 and your attack by 3 on level up with this chamber equipped. So this is the only chamber that will enhance your magic defense. So, depending on how you want to build Aris in terms of his stats, this could be a good choice. And enemigo skills are varied. There's a lot of different enemigo skills in the game, which you have to learn by using the skill Strat Stealer, and then you will learn the enemy's skills. And enemigo skills usually have unique effects, which you can't get any other way. For example, the skill Kappa, which the Kappa horses use. Kappa's damage formula is based on how much HP the Kappa horses have lost. So it does the exact damage of how much HP they have lost. So Aris can learn Kappa, and so then he can use Kappa on the enemy, and it's got the same damage formula. If Aris uses it, it is the exact it's the exact amount of HP that Aris has lost. That will be the damage that it does. So that's a really unique damage formula that you can't get anywhere else with any other skill. So they're quite interesting. They can be quite situational, but enemigo skills definitely have a use in the game. And COPYCATFACE really works well with all drives, because enemigo skills are quite varied. There's all different kind of skills, so it works pretty well. Okay, so lastly, I just want to quickly cover some quite powerful drive/chamber combinations.
Now you're in for it.
Booster and Pickpocket. The reason why I am highlighting this combination is because Booster is the drive that gives you hype. And remember, hype lets you act multiple times in one turn. So if you use hype, then you can do all your stealing with Pickpocket. So you can try and steal the item, try and steal the weapon, try and steal the armor, all in one turn. Just in one turn you can get that all done, and it just speeds things up. And if the weapon or the armor has a low success rate, if it's quite difficult to steal the piece of equipment that you're trying to steal, it can really help to be able to do it multiple times in one turn via the use of hype. So this combination is useful for that reason. Okay, next one. Booster and COPYCATFACE. Booster and COPYCATFACE is one of those combinations that just kind of it should cover you for almost every situation, because the enemigo skills are so varied, so different, and because Booster lets you buff yourself and has some healing ability as well. And it's got decent attack. This combination you shouldn't ever find yourself really stuck in terms of doing something. Like, you should always be able to do something to the enemy if you have this combination. So that's why I highlighted it. Okay, Sand King and Chainsmoker. The reason why I wanted to pull up this combination is because Sand King has got the highest magic attack of the three drives. So Aris will have very high magic attack when he is the Sand King. And Chainsmoker, the Chamber. Chainsmoker lets you chain lots of different abilities. You can combo between Cigarette Burn and Straight to Hell, those two fire elemental magic spells. So the reason why I'm highlighting this combination is because Sand King, very high magic attack, and Chainsmoker lets you combo magic spells, fire elemental magic spells, continuously on the enemy. So you can just cast Cigarette Burn again and again and again and again. So if you've got really high magic attack, that's going to do a ton of damage. So that's the reason for this combination. Troll and Begonia. Okay, Troll and Begonia Troll has got the highest, has got the highest physical attack of the three drives, and Begonia lets you use flowers. Sorry, Begonia lets you use flowers, so that will boost your physical attack even more. So this combination can just make you a really hard-hitting powerhouse offensively. Plus Troll gives you all sorts of debuffs as well, so you can Begonia lets you buff yourself, and Troll lets you debuff the enemy. So you can quickly open up a huge gap in terms of the stats between yourself and the enemy. You're buffing yourself, you're debuffing the enemy. Good times. Okay. Lastly, I just want to cover Troll and Chainsmoker, because similar to the previous combination, Troll and Begonia, remember Troll has the highest physical attack of the three drives, so very high, very damaging physical attacks. And Chainsmoker has access to the skill Chain Smoking, which is a physical fire elemental skill which you can chain again and again, so you can just keep on doing it against the enemy. So if you couple Chain Smoking with Troll's very high physical attack, then it's going to be big damage, and it's going to be happy days. So those are just a few sample combinations that I wanted to highlight, but what I would really love is for you guys to experiment and come up with some more combinations that you thought were really good. But these combinations, I think, are pretty good. So that's the end of the tutorial, guys, and thanks for watching, and have fun on Bogus Journey. Hopefully you'll be a little bit more clued up now. Later.
Touch your toes for a fucking change.
Touch them.